Our marvelous guest today is Annie O'Sullivan. Annie is the author of this fine book, Can You Hear Me Now? But Annie is much more than that. Annie is a radio show host, and she's mighty popular. Annie, tell the folks about your radio show.
My radio show is Blog Talk Radio. It's internet radio. The name of the show is Can You Hear Me Now? With Annie O'Sullivan. We're on every Friday, live.
You're really doing a public service more than entertainment. You are doing shows that have an effect on human behavior, and shows that are educational, and shows that are touching people's lives. And I want you to touch upon some of the things that you do that create the fire that is spreading about listening to your radio show.
It's primarily based around abuse. Obviously, the name of the show is named after my book. But we talk about, and I'm just going to list these things off, and then I'll tell you how they're all connected. We have done shows on diet, on exercise, on, there's a couple that wrote a workbook, Who Do I Trust? This is just marvelous. We talk about relationships. We a couple that do relationship counseling workshops around the United States, and they came on and did an hour-and-a-half show. We actually had an extra long show that day. We've done various authors. We've done people who are out doing tours around the country. I've got a comedian out of LA, and I just love him. He's a pretty funny guy, but he's doing some pretty serious stuff for kids. We actually attempted to do a fundraiser, and we'll see how that goes. Remains to be seen. The shows are available in the archive, so you can always go and listen to them later. The common thread is people who have abuse issues as children, or even as an adult. If you've found that your life has just gotten turned upside down somehow, there's always a little bit about what the guest, what their background is, and why they're doing what they're doing. For instance, you wouldn't think that a show about child abuse would talk about diet. We had an entire show on diet and another entire show with the same person on exercise. Because if you suffer from depression, post-traumatic stress, diet, and I can attest that this is true. If I'm not eating right, if I'm not getting exercise, and I'm not getting enough sleep, I am not taking care of myself.
That's correct.
I'm not. And that's something that survivors don't do very well.
Right.
The interesting thing is, you get somebody who's got a little bit of history of their own,
right? But
they've got this thing on, these are the things your body needs to be healthy. And we forget that. We want comfort food because we need comforting. And those things tend to pack on the weight. And we don't want to be, and that now you're just, you've already got bad self-esteem, and you've added to it because you've eaten yourself into a corner.
If we don't eat right and take care of ourselves right, it affects our entire being. However, with the comfort foods, it deadens our pain.
Oh, yeah. It feels good to eat.
Yeah, the carbohydrates, the sugars.
And it is. It's always carbs and sugars.
And they deaden our thinking. And they really don't help.
No.
They actually deaden our body. So I can see why diet and exercise have a direct correlation to what's going on in our lives.
Oh, absolutely. And to take that even a step further, your brain chemical. What goes on up here also counts what you're putting into your system. You need certain vegetables and certain kinds of carbohydrates to have good brain functioning. So to think clearly, it's just important. It is so important. Bagels and cream cheese are not good chemicals for your brain. I wish it was true, but I had to tell you, I like bagels and cream cheese, but and same for exercise. If you're exercising, you get your endorphins going. And we're not talking crazy stuff like get out there and run 5 miles or go to the gym and you know, pump 100 pounds of iron. I mean, simple things like get off the sofa, you know, walk around the block every day. And these are the kinds of things that was suggested. We talked about how important exercise was and why, but then it didn't turn into what you would expect. And I did hear from a lot of listeners. They thought, wow, you know, we thought you were going to tell us to go lift weights and run 5 miles and join a marathon, and we didn't. We said go out, walk, stroll, crawl, do whatever you have to, but get outside and just move your body. Because once you start moving, you start feeling better, and ultimately you will walk a little bit more. You will probably never turn into the next Jane Fonda pumping iron, but you will be moving and you will feel so much better. And the double benefit of that is as you get your body moving, you get to exercising, you may not look any different, but you feel so much better about yourself. You just feel good because you did it. And part of that is you get your endorphins going, which you need. We weren't meant, human beings did not join the planet. We were built for moving and walking endlessly.
So the common thread through all of the shows is embetterment. Even with the comedian. The joy, the purpose for which he brings this joy, his ultimate community dedication.
He does some wonderful things. Bill Lackner does what he calls ACEs for kids. He's done it for a number of years. He was a firefighter years ago, and so anyway, he's making the circuit. He does L.A., Vegas, Scottsdale, Phoenix, and you know, he just kind of makes that circle. But and that's fun. But the most important thing he does is ACEs. It's actors, comedians, entertainers, and sports figures for kids. And he puts together these programs with these people. And this is all very low-key under the table. This is not your usual, you know, the stars are making a lot of noise about what they're doing. These guys are doing this stuff like nobody knows they're doing it. But he puts these programs together for at-risk kids. He brings them in. You know, these are kids that have been identified that they're in a bad situation. They bring them in. They show them how to do stuff. They make them feel important. They're doing some really fun things. He was going to start an organization up in Chicago. And I think he's got one in L.A. now, and I just would really like everybody to look him up. But, you know, he's got his own story. The people that do the relationship counseling, they also, Dale wrote a book, Tear Down This Wall. It's about abuse within the church. Various authors are doing various things, but you're right. The theme through all of this is how I got better. Some people healed with God. Some people healed because they did discover exercise. We don't care. I don't care how you get there. I just like to throw a whole smorgasbord of stuff out there, and it doesn't matter to me if it's, you know, Judaism or Buddhism, or if you've got an idea that can get somebody through to the other side so that they're living their life instead of just looking at how sad it is, we hope that you take away something.
So the objective is to help them find themselves and their value through something and start taking care of themselves,
right,
their future, their talent, their ability, and bring out their natural wisdom and know that it's okay.
Yeah, because what works for one person isn't going to work for another. I think that I've been doing this, well, I've only been doing the radio for about not even a year. I was on all kinds of other people's radio shows, but I wasn't doing my own till this last May. It's interesting that there's plenty of people out there that will say, this is how you get better. And if you don't do X, Y, Z, you are just going to have a miserable life, and that's not true. If it was the same for everybody, we wouldn't have this problem. We would just grow up and go through the little washer of life and everything would be marvelous. It's not. Everybody's different and everybody's got a different take on things. Religion didn't work for me. It worked really good for somebody else I know. You know.
There are 1,000 paths to the top of the mountain.
That's right. So just get on a path. And so we throw all these paths out there. And we have a lot of writers, you know, that talk about, and you know, it's pretty specific. Those books are about their childhood and their life. But if they don't have a positive ending, if they can't put a positive spin on it, I don't have them on. And that might sound a little mean, but I don't think there's anything to be gained by listening to someone who says, my life was ruined and it's never going to be better.
Nor is it helpful to have a competition on who can tell the most dramatic for me story.
Right, right. So we just don't allow for that. We just look for the positive thing. The other side of that is we have talked about some pretty ugly topics, and we have a laugh, and I think that we are showing people that you can have a conversation about child abuse without having the stigma and the stink that sticks to it. And we think that that's important because if you can't talk about it, we're just teaching children to continue to not talk about it.
Well, you wouldn't punish somebody that had been in a car wreck and treat them as if they were contaminated for the rest of their life.
No, you wouldn't. As a matter of fact, I use that very thing. I said, if you were in a car wreck, you know, nobody would call you car wreck, you know, broken leg for the rest of your life. You know, this doesn't have to define who you are. And I feel so strongly about that because it's really easy to slip into victim mode. I'm not doing this because I was abused. You know, I'm not doing this because of my depression. And I would even say don't call it my depression. Call it somebody else's depression, but don't call it yours. It's not mine. I don't want it.
Right.
I don't want it to be mine.
There is a way out.
Absolutely.
It's not a threat anymore. It's a challenge now.
Yep.
It was a threat when you were little and helpless. You're not anymore.
Right.
Take control of your life.
Right. Absolutely.
Because if you don't, you're leaving it open for somebody else to.
Right. And the big thing is too is to make people understand. We talk a lot about the way that your mind works. You know, and you feel like it's confusing. This is the confliction, I think, is when you're first starting to deal with all this stuff, it's confusing because you didn't feel it. I'm just going to throw an age out there. You didn't feel it when you were 9.
Right.
Now you're 39, and you're feeling it. And it's confusing because it's not happening now, so why am I feeling it now? So that's why I think people need help. You don't understand why you're feeling it. You're feeling it now because you have to feel it at some point in your life. You've got to go through this. You can pay me now, pay me later.
It's going to be there until you acknowledge it and understand it, learn how to deal with it, and move beyond it.
Right. You have to address it. You have to be able to say, this happened.
Denial won't prevent that feeling. Mm-mm. Denial creates that feeling.
That's right. You just have to go with it. And I know a woman I've been talking to recently. It seems like I've always got 1 or 2 people that, for whatever reason, I start talking to them privately. That's what I say, you know, you just need to recognize. If you can recognize that this is an old feeling, you're safe. This is an old feeling. Because what I hear a lot of is, all I can do is cry. Well, you know what? You're doing 10 years worth of crying. That's what you're doing. You're just getting it out.
That's right.
And sooner or later, someday, hopefully soon, someday you'll be done crying. You'll just be done crying. I went through it. For almost 10 years it took me.
Our body has memory of things that we don't want to acknowledge. That's part of the problem.
Right. Well, you know, I teach first aid and CPR, and I always say that in front of the class. In an emergency, your body will remember what to do. That's why I make them physically do it, because you're not going to go through the little checklist. Your body's going to move, and that's awesome in an emergency. It's not so awesome when you're reliving something.
That's correct.
You know, it's not fun.
That's why we should get it out, relive it, straighten it out in our minds.
Right.
And acknowledge the fact that we were in an accident, we were wounded, but it doesn't have to stop us, paralyze us, or even have any sense of direction of where we're going.
Right. And it doesn't mean, it's not an excuse to beat your kids or to be, say nasty things to them. It's not a reason to ruin your marriage. There are so many things that this gets blamed on. And at some point you have to take a real hard look at yourself and say, my parents are responsible for what happened to me between the ages of 1 and, birth, and I was about 16 and a half when I started running away, seriously running away. And so I would say, you can cut myself a break and say from 0 to 18, my parents were responsible for what I was doing and how I was doing it and how I was living and my attitudes and thought processes. From 18 to today, it's my job. What am I going to do with that?
Exactly.
What am I doing? Am I going to say for the rest of my life till I die, my parents abused me? It starts to sound like
you're using it for one leg.
Yeah. And even if you're not, and I know that at various times this has made people a little angry, but 100% of the time they have come back to me and said, yeah, you're right, my parents can't fix this, they're not going to fix this, what they did was wrong.
Right.
But what I do with it from this day forward, that's on me.
Correct. Because life isn't perfect.
Right.
If we all were born to perfect parents that made no mistakes, it'd be a different world. They, too, were born in ignorance, subject to the ignorance into which they came.
That's true.
And sooner or later, we need to stop and analyze our lives and say, where are we? And where are we going?
AA likes, I've been pretty lucky. I could have been a drunk and an alcoholic and a drug addict. I mean, all the things that, my family seems to be just full of. But AA has that taking responsibility is one of their steps. You have to take responsibility for your own life.
That's right. That's right. Because it is your life.
That's right. And if you want it to be good, yeah. So, you just need to find a way to weed through that. And I think that therapy is, I personally really shove that all the time. I think people need to go to therapists and counselors or life coaches, whatever you want to call them. I don't think that this is something that you should go through yourself because of the PTSD, the potential for that. And that's scary.
Post-traumatic stress disorder is more common than most people realize.
Oh, yeah. And I had been in therapy for 3 years. I was going into my 3rd year. And my therapist, that was the first time I'd heard, nobody had said it out loud to me. What they were saying to me out loud, and because I was a psych major, didn't like it, they told me that I had borderline personality disorder.
Oh, that's nice.
I hate that. I still don't like that they pinned me with it. But they used to like to say that you could never get over that, and I would argue that that's not true. Like, I have been diagnosed in no uncertain terms with PTSD, severe PTSD. And even though I'm not in therapy, I've been out of therapy for years and years now.
Right.
The thing is I recognize it when it happens, and I can diffuse it myself.
Right.
Which is not to say that it's not painful or it's, it is what it is.
Right.
But to be able to recognize it for what it is huge. You pay for what happened to you at the hand of your parents for years and years and years.
You do.
And it's funny because, I wish I knew where it was. I'm not a big Bible quoter, but there is a line in the Bible that says the child will pay for the sins of the father.
Until the 3rd generation.
Is that what it is?
That's correct. Yes, the sins of the father will be visited upon the children until the 3rd generation.
Right.
So it usually takes 3 generations to overcome a family ignorance.
So are you talking like the father, there would be my dad, me, and then my kids, to the the next generation? Because I always mean to tell you, I look at my kids and I just think, they didn't learn it from me. They're in good marriages. One of my daughters married her high school sweetheart. They've been together, mean, my longest relationship was with my cat. It's true. Sad but true. My cat is 18 years old. You know, I look at my kids and I think, you know, they went through some things with me and I dumped them right into therapy. The interesting thing is now that they're adults, they don't hesitate if something is not quite right or they're having a hard time with something, or, you know, life is just, there's no stigma in their mind. You're going to a third party who's disinterested and will be objective and tell you you're right or you're wrong, you know, or here's how you're thinking and how do you feel about that. And my kids go, but I look at my my grandchildren and they are just miraculously healthy little creatures.
So wonderful. Because you dared to break the mold.
I did, and that's what they used to tell me when I would think I couldn't go another minute in therapy. They would tell me, "It won't happen anymore after you. Right. You're going to stop it right here. It stops."
To break the mold, and that's the whole point. Change isn't change unless you really do it.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
You don't talk about change and then not do it because it isn't change.
Oh, it's hard work. And, you know, and so, anyway, these are the things we talk about on the radio. We talk about all of these things, and it's kind of a free-for-all sometimes. We have call-ins. We were doing a show actually on relationships, and I had actually specifically asked Dale and his wife to be on the show because I was in a new relationship that I was really liking. We talked privately, which is another benefit of being a show host. But, you know, he had some really good insights. You know, and those two know what we're talking about when you say, you know, you've just got, well, we were calling it stinking thinking.
It's true.
But it is. You know, and he's telling me, of course you don't know how to trust men. Why would you? You never have one you could trust, so why would you? Well, the funny thing about it is once you recognize that this is okay,
yeah,
it makes it okay to go talk to him about it and say, I have this problem.
Exactly.
I didn't know this about myself, but and he did talk about it on the radio. I told him, I said, I'll be the guinea pig, put me out there. And we did. And he listened. So matter of fact, he thought it was a great show. But we talked about the problems that I have had in relationships and where they seemed to go south. It was most interesting to me that was like, I just needed somebody to tell me what I was doing wrong. I didn't get it. I didn't know. You know, you just keep muddling over here and hoping something turns out okay, when it was as simple as going to him and saying, I'm having trouble with this and this is why. And he was so okay with it. You know, we talked about it, and it's not going away, but it's in a different place. It's not stuffed in my back pocket anymore, hiding,
right,
leaving my potential partner wondering, you know, what's wrong with me.
Right.
You know, once you talk about it, it becomes a reasonable issue. Then it's just, well, it's just who you are, you know. And if you're having a bad day and you don't trust me today, I'll just tell you tomorrow. You know.
There you go.
And that's kind of how he looked at it. I told you he was a nice guy.
There you go. There you go. It's even more important than just thinking. What happens is culturally, we as women are taught to be ladies.
Oh, yeah.
And we are always trying to not hurt anybody's feelings or say anything out of line and be politically correct, which ultimately, quite frequently, comes down as just plain dishonest because we will not approve. It's an inconvenient truth.
That's right.
So we're not dealing with it.
It's like, oh, I'm making you mad. I didn't mean to make you mad.
If you can't discuss a difference of opinion, if you can't disagree without being disagreeable, if you're terrified to disagree, you've blocked the communication already.
You have.
You're not going there.
You have.
You've got to be able to disagree without being disagreeable, and if they have to be disagreeable, that's their problem.
That's right, and that
grows.
grows.
Move forward without fear.
That grows. Once you start hiding things, which I hid things for years in my relationships because I felt like I was really damaged goods. You don't want them to know.
Right.
You know, and when I first got married, now it went south maybe worse than it might have. It might never have gone south, really. I mean, we were young, we got along, you know, but I didn't want him to know about my past. I was so horrified that someone would find out, and I divorced this guy without ever telling him why. My father handled the whole thing in California. I was in North Carolina. And my father said, I'll tell him everything you ever did. He was going to out me to this guy I was married to. Because we eloped. When I think about how I felt about that, it's an outrage that I felt he could out me, when that wasn't the case at all. You know, I mean, it's an absurd thought. But at 18, 19 years old, you know, I'm trying to get away from them. And he's telling me he's going to tell my new husband.
Well, he was paralyzing you with his guilt, and that's why he kept you down all along.
Oh, man, it was
You were
horrible.
always the 12-year-old slut. So this is what he did to you.
Yep.
And yet he paralyzed you with that guilt and held you down, and you were so accustomed to it that you believed it.
Oh, yeah. Some part of my little brain knew, but the part that he was going to destroy my life was bigger. You know. So, you know, this poor guy, I divorced him. It never even occurred to me that he could possibly love me enough to be hurt. That's how broken I was. I didn't give him the benefit of an explanation. And through the years, you know, I wondered off and on when I was in therapy. I did call him. And I talked to him for a minute, and he was still angry. And it had been, I don't know, 10, 15 years.
Right.
It's been a while. He was still very angry. And I don't blame him for that.
Right.
I just thought maybe I could make it right by
Honesty.
explaining to him, you know, what had happened. But he didn't want to hear it. And I just thought, well, I'm not going to, you know, beat him up with it.
Right.
If he doesn't want to hear it, he doesn't want to hear it. So, you know, those are the kinds of things we talk about. We do talk about stuff like that.
That's good.
And I think it's good for other people to hear us talk about it. And they can call in. We like it.
It's a good show.
You know.
I have friends tell me it's a great show. And people tell me, I've been on her show.
Yeah, you've been on it.
I've been on
That's
your show
right.
too, yes. So it is a great show. It really is.
Thank you. We're pretty proud of it. We have high hopes. It's my baby. You know?
I want to thank you for all that you do. Really. From every person that's ever been abused, lost, afraid, imagined they were the only ones, thought they were an island, thought nobody else ever experienced what they experienced. From all of them, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for changing lives, because in every life you change, it buckles over to the next generation being free. I want to thank you for touching this generation and making a better tomorrow. You're great. I'm your fan. Thank you for letting me interview you.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome.